So how do we shift from people pleasing and having no boundaries to being able to set boundaries and being able to prioritize self and self-care? This is where the power of no comes in. No. It's a tiny word with massive power, but so many of us struggle to use it and to use it as a complete sentence. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of A Work in Progress. I'm Kimberly, your host, and I'm so happy you're here with me. Today we're diving into a word we all know, but very few of us actually use it effectively. No. We'll talk about why it's so hard to say, why it's essential for your mental health, and how to get comfortable using it as a complete sentence without explanation and without guilt. If you're ready to reclaim your time, energy, and peace of mind, this episode is for you. By the end, you'll understand how saying no is not only a powerful tool for setting boundaries, but is also a complete sentence and an extraordinarily important part of building mental fitness. But before we dive in, this is your reminder to breathe. So take a minute with me, and I want you to exhale, focusing on releasing tension and grounding yourself in this moment. We're constantly inundated and bombarded with decisions and with competing energy. Right now is your time to focus and to breathe. So unclench your jaw, relax your tongue from the roof of your mouth, let your arms hang heavy at your side, and breathe. And if all you do today is give yourself this moment to slow down, you are winning. All right, so let's jump in it. Why do so many of us struggle to say no? It often comes down to societal conditioning. From a young age, we're taught to be helpful, agreeable, and accommodating. We want to avoid conflict and keep the peace, especially in our personal and professional lives. But here's the thing. When you say yes to everybody else, you're saying no to yourself. Over time, this leads to overwhelm, burnout, and even resentment. By always prioritizing others, you end up neglecting your own needs. So how do we shift from people pleasing and having no boundaries to being able to set boundaries and being able to prioritize self and self-care? This is where the power of no comes in. No is not about being rude or selfish. It's about respecting yourself and recognizing that your time, energy, and well-being are just as valuable as anyone else's. So the next time someone asks you to take something on you don't have the capacity for, think of your no as a gift you're giving to yourself or to others. Imagine that with time you say yes. When you really want to say no, you're withdrawing from your energy bank. So what happens when that account runs dry? So many of us end up depleted, resentful, pushed off from achieving our goals, or not even knowing who we are or what our goals are. Reversing this is simple in theory, but hard in practice. It's why it takes some mental fitness to get comfortable with the idea of no being a sentence that stands alone. So when you think about when you can't do something, how many times do you say no and then give a full-on explanation? I'm really sorry, I'd like to, but I can't. XYZ is happening. And how many times do we catch ourselves maybe not fully telling the truth because we just might not want to do the thing? So then we make up an excuse. That doesn't feel really good, and that's taking a deposit out of our mental fitness bank. No does not need a justification. It's not something that you have to explain or apologize for. When you say no, you can leave it at that. You're communicating clearly and directly. It's not open for discussion or dialogue. Think about if you were on the other side of that and a friend told you no. You would respect that and you would feel grace for them. So remind yourself that when you say no, this is a complete sentence. You're giving yourself permission to prioritize other things. You're not opening it up to dialogue or discussion. You don't want to build a body of resentment on either side of it. So before you can say no confidently, you need to know what you're saying yes to in your life. What are your priorities? What are your non-negotiables? Because knowing this will make it easier to recognize when a request that comes in is out of alignment with your values. So when we wrap up here, I want you to take a moment and what are those things that maybe you've said yes to that are building up resentments? And look at your schedule and where have you said yes to others and what are you sacrificing? For me, one of my non-negotiables is physical fitness and physical activity. So I recognize that based on my schedule, when I'm saying yes to other people, oftentimes it's going to come at a cost of that time. So it's got to be a really good thing for me to be able to say yes to, because then I'm saying no to myself. So make a list of those priorities. And maybe you don't know what that is in that moment, and that's okay. By planting the seeds and starting to think about it, you're going to start to pause and become aware of what are your priorities? What are your non-negotiables? What are your goals? Practice the pause. This is one of my favorite hacks. So when someone asks you for something, practice pausing before answering. Don't rush to say yes out of habit. Take a moment to check in with yourself. Do I really want to do this? Do I have the capacity to do this? Am I the right person and the best person to do this? A well-placed pause can give you the clarity you need to confidently say no or not right now, right? And that is still a no in this moment. It's a no deferred, but for now, this is good. Training wheels, not right now. Setting clear boundaries isn't just about saying no to others, it's saying yes to yourself. So start small. If you're not ready to say no outright, come back to, let me think about it. I'll get back to you, or I don't have time for this right now. This helps to practice that pause. It gives you time to evaluate whether it's something you genuinely want to commit to. When we say yes to everything, we're constantly stretching ourselves too thin. It doesn't just affect your mental well-being, but it impacts your energy, your relationships, and even your performance in work and personal progress. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So when you're constantly saying yes to the countless requests throughout your day, you're saying no to a whole lot of other things. We only have 24 hours in a day. We need to make sure that we're being productive with that and that we're prioritizing. So come back and be true to yourself. If you are here because you are running on empty, this is your reminder to start practicing the pause, to take a moment and figure out what are your non-negotiables? What is your why? What are those things that are extraordinarily important to you? And then coming back and being able to say no to anything and everything else that no longer is in line with those values, that is taking from your time and energy. I promise you, you 100% do have time for self-care. You're just not choosing it. And I'm guessing it's probably because you don't even know what that looks like. So take a moment and think about what it is that makes you you. What are those non-negotiables? What are those things that keep you pouring from your saucer, from that excess, so that we're not pouring from an empty cup? We want to be so full of abundance that we can give that abundance, that leftover, that extra to everybody else. But we can't do that if we're constantly saying yes to everything around us. So take a moment next time, and maybe you practice this. Practice this with your kids, with your partner, with a coworker. Go back, have them ask you something, and instead of instinctively saying yes or just doing the thing, right? How many times do we just do the thing? That's still a yes, isn't it? Even though we're not audibly saying it, we're doing it. We're pulling ourselves off. It's a distraction. One of the biggest reasons we say no is because we don't want to let others down, but ask yourself, are you willing to continue this cycle of disappointment, of not achieving your goals, of feeling run down? People who care about you will respect your boundaries. So reframe that disappointment and think about it as you're giving yourself that gift so that you can show up better to others around you. It is going to be far worth it in the long run. as you're getting used to this no as a complete sentence idea. Another reason we don't often say no is because it brings up feelings of guilt. We feel bad not being available or helpful, especially when it comes to somebody close to us. So shift your mindset from guilt to empowerment and remind yourself that every no is a yes to something else, like your goals, your peace of mind, your mental fitness. And you can find ways to show up for others. And maybe it's by teaching them the power of no as well. And then you're empowering people to go out and to find other solutions as well. Check yourself. Are you saying yes to everything because you're afraid of missing out on an opportunity or an experience? We're so cultured and cultivated into this Instagram photoshopped world of everybody's living the high life and constantly on the go and managing all of these tasks, being a mom, being a daughter, being a wife, being a coworker, being a friend, being all of these roles that were held to an unrealistic standard, and we don't want to miss out on the next great opportunity. But when we constantly say yes, we are taking from our bank. So when we say no, it helps us to free up time to align with our goals and focus on things that truly matter. So I want you to look in the mirror and practice saying no and leaving it at that. And next time you catch yourself, no, but, right? And giving a whole explanation. What are you doing? You're opening this up for discussion, for dialogue. You could be putting yourself in a compromising situation where you're not going to feel good about over-explaining it. So practice and just say no. Remember that no is a full sentence, a declaration of your worth, a tool to reclaim your time and energy. Friends, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss an update. And if something resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment, leave a like, or share it with somebody who might need to hear it. Remember that saying no to others is saying yes to yourself. So continue to tune in as we continue to build a mentally fit foundation. Until then, remember to breathe, look for the good, and be the rising tide. Be well, my friends.